Say arts administration is really kind of a foundational part of my what I call a portfolio career. I've worked in all aspects of music as an educator, a trombonist, a composer, conductor, arranger, all sorts of things. But I did undergrad at Boston College, and it was a really funny mix because I grew up in Annapolis and went to Annapolis Public High School, and it was a very diverse experience. And then I went to Boston College, which is like the exact opposite. I started studying music and computer science, and I just kind of siphoned off the computer science trail and went full on into music. And one of the folks I was studying with there, asked what my plans were after BC, and I said, "Oh, I don't know, I might take a couple years off, get some experience, then maybe think about grad school for music." He said, "Go to grad school right away." He's like, "You're not going to get more experience. You're not going to be playing more once you get a day job. You're not going to have time to play." So if I was a trombonist, and it was a very kind of big fish in a small pond experience. I was one of like 10 music majors. So I applied to a few different schools, got into Peabody, came back down to live in Maryland again for 2 years, did a master's in trombone performance, lived in Baltimore, and I knew pretty early, admittedly, when I got to Peabody that I wasn't going to be a performer full time, and I just didn't quite have it, and
How do you know that though?
I think some of it was, I think there was some inherent talent, but I think the giveaway was I felt I was able to recognize I didn't have the work ethic to practice for just hours a day. I didn't have it, and these are things that you can learn. And if you know that your end goal, this is what you want to do, and I'm gonna sacrifice what I need to get to it, but that it wasn't like that for me for performance. I got my first arts admin job at Peabody in the communications office, kind of whet the appetite there. I got into a little bit of composing just on the side for some friends. And after graduating, I didn't know what was next, and I was really lucky to get a job back up in Boston. So I worked for 8 years for the Boston University Tanglewood Institute, and it was like the most glorious mix of urban lifestyle, Boston 9 months of the year, and then out to Lenox, Massachusetts with Tanglewood and the Boston Symphony Orchestra. So started working for the Tanglewood Institute in 2007. And I did that for about 8 years or so. In 2013, I decided I wanted a big change of pace and applied for graduate school, a second master's degree, and ended up going to Berklee College of Music's film scoring degree, or scoring for film, television, video games, and it was actually in Valencia, Spain. So I thought that was going to be a 9 month, and actually I thought it was going to be just a 9 month stint overseas with a 3 month fellowship or internship that was going to be in Los Angeles. And when I got to Spain, they told the students that they had canceled and shifted the internship, the built-in internship in Los Angeles, and that instead we were going to do kind of a recording project in London, and we were going to stay in Spain for the summer. So the 9 months in Spain turned into a full year, but then during that year, I applied for and got a fellowship to stay a second year at Berklee. During this time, I was seeing my now wife, but we were just dating at the time. We had met in Boston, and she was in Scotland. So during those 2 years abroad, we were seeing each other, her in Scotland, me in Spain, and it was a great time to travel. Travel was so cheap and easy, and we would just spend $50 each and meet each other in Belgium or something. It's really, really fortunate. And after I finished my fellowship, we got married, and she imported me into Scotland while she finished her doctoral work in Edinburgh, and I got a day job in Glasgow, and then we moved to Glasgow, and then so originally that 9 month plan to go to Spain turned into 8 years overseas. Technically, my wife was doing a doctorate, I had mentioned, and she's a glass artist, but her doctoral work, her research work, was in creativity. So she was in creativity, ideation. Yeah, but it was like through the medium of glass studio work. She and I have been working together since 2008. So we met at Tanglewood, And then we started seeing each other in 2013 when we went overseas. And then we got married, and we've been still been working together. We did interactive glass and sound installation work. We applied jointly for some grant opportunities in the UK that were fortunately funded. And so collaboration has been a really big part of my growth as a composer and a musician in general. I used to just kind of tuck myself away in my little home studio and just kind of write or just play on the computer. And, I learned the value of collaboration and how it kind of unlocks a whole new potential for art and performance art. And I think that's actually a lot of what I'm hoping that Chesapeake Music can start breaking into. I don't want to replace anything that's being done. Chesapeake Music has a rich history. It's got an amazing supporter base, both in the form of volunteers and donors and general patrons and concert goers. We don't want to replace anything, but it'd be really nice to find ways to supplement what we're doing. And there's room in our calendar year to look at these types of collaborative opportunities, experimental programming. Yeah, there are a couple things that come to mind. Well, one thing that has been undeniably of interest to concert goers, and this has been maybe most significantly at the orchestra level, like a lot of large orchestras have done this, they've started putting music to film and, in a concert setting. So they'll perform the live soundtrack to a movie. And I think that it demonstrates a multi-dimensional interest from the viewer or from the customer. All of these things are forms of entertainment. You go to Chesapeake Music, or you go to the movies, or you choose to stay home and watch TV, or whatever you'd like to do. These are just different forms of entertainment. You get different emotional reactions from them. But I think that when you add this extra dimension of visuals, people just tend to get a little bit more from it. And it's not saying it replaces what you can get from just listening, because there's nothing to me that can replace the sound of live acoustical music that just kind of rattles your bones and it gets in there. But if you could add some visual elements to it, then that is just another way to kind of break down this inherent barrier to a lot of classical music and chamber music, where people feel like they don't understand it.
Yeah.
And it's not about understanding. So if you can just, you put some visuals to it, it kind of unlocks a little key, and it allows people to say like, oh, I'm enjoying this, I'm watching it, I get it. And it's not about getting it, it's just about enjoying yourself. Yeah, there's loads you can do. It can be across all sorts of different visual elements too. We could have something very straightforward and collaborate with some of the local fine arts galleries. And maybe it's putting some music to some of the paintings that are already there, or it's commissioning some artists to work with musicians and create something either live or in advance of a performance opportunity. It could also be more advanced on the technology side of things, and you could have sound kind of activating different visual elements. There's a lot you can do nowadays, and it takes a little bit of digging in and figuring out where it fits within your constituency group. And one of the things that you mentioned COVID briefly earlier, and COVID was one of the reasons that my wife and I moved back to the States, just to reconnect and be a little bit closer to family and friends again. But one of the interesting things that COVID did was it admittedly, decimated a lot of the arts industries and arts organizations, but at the same time, it made people kind of pivot and look at performance art in a new way. And I think people got really, really creative to make sure that they could stay afloat and keep creating. And, we have a whole new areas of art that didn't really exist until you have to create it. Yeah. So that's, if you have to find a silver lining, not sure I would trade it for all of the negative that we experienced with COVID, but it's an interesting outcome. Well, but I've been able to hit the ground running because this is such an amazing organization and such an amazing community to join. Chesapeake Music has been only operating off of a part-time executive director, the founder, Don Buxton, for, he was there 38 years, and, a part-time kind of office staff. So it's really been skeletal and reliant on a volunteer base, and that volunteer base is phenomenal. They're running aspects of nonprofit performance and presenting organizations. I've never seen volunteers work like this and take the kind of ownership they have. So I've been able to hit the ground running because things have been set up in a really great and thoughtful way. I'm the first full-time position that the organization's had. So I would say this is probably going to be a pretty big transition year for, how we're going to work going forward. Some of my hope is that we're going to alleviate some of the burden on the volunteers and make sure that people don't get burned out and that they can keep volunteering for the passion, but without feeling the stress and burden of pulling everything off. So it's allowed me to hit the ground running, and it's a good thing because we're just into October. We have our first concert of this new season on Saturday. It's a great way to kind of start our new season. And what's also exciting is this is our 40th anniversary season. So Chesapeake Music started almost 40 years ago. This past summer was the 39th Chamber Music Festival, and that's how the organization started. So this will be our 40th Chamber Music Festival, and that kind of rounds out the end of our 40th anniversary year, so to speak. I can't get too far ahead of myself for announcing our summer festival lineup. We'll be able to go a little more public with what's going to be a really exciting lineup, probably in late November or early December. But it's going to include festival veterans, people that have been with us since the beginning, along with some of our young rising star talent that we've been supporting, and I'd like to say cultivating, but we don't take full credit for anything. But we've been helping to support through our competitions and programming efforts. And then we have at least one big headlining ensemble that's going to be a really big splashy name for Chesapeake Music, probably one of the biggest names we've brought in. And they'll be coming this summer. It's the year to do it for a few reasons. One is that it's an anniversary year, and we want to mark the occasion. But as an organization who just hired its first full-time executive director, we want to demonstrate the type of investment that the organization has made in itself. For hopefully the idea is the benefit of the community. We want to put more resources out there to learn more about what's attractive to the community. So, if we have a big name like what's coming in, that might attract people from outside kind of the Midshore community and bring new tourists into Easton. But during this year, we want to be exploring what the community here is after also, because we've got a lot more people to figure out how to reach and make music available. Well, daunting is a really good word to use when it comes to reaching kind of a younger audience base. Flat out stressful is another way I'd put it, because the future of Chesapeake Music as a nonprofit is going to be reliant on reaching a new audience base and younger generations of music lovers. But kind of as you put it, the future of classical music in general and jazz and all of these, some of these more traditional art forms, they have to find ways to evolve a little bit, I think, to reach these younger audiences. So one way that we're doing that is we're trying to make sure that we are reaching at the student age, in the school systems. So we've got kind of an education arm of Chesapeake Music, so to speak. It's called Youth Reach. And, just as an example, in 2024, we've brought kind of a specialized group of artists in. They're part of a Kaleidoscope Quartet. And they rotate out different musicians based on the goals and availability of what the group's going to accomplish. But they're based out of New York City, and they came in a little earlier this year to work in some elementary schools. They worked at Tillman and St. Michael's. Later in November, they're going to do a week-long residency at Easton Elementary School, simultaneously with a week-long residency with Building African American Minds, BAM. So those are different areas where we're introducing the idea of chamber music, but in a very accessible way. You know, they're truly specialized artists that can do this sort of thing. They're not going to go in and try and just wow people with fast playing and make the jaws drop and then get up and leave. You know, they're there to engage with the students. And one way to reach some of the younger generations is to make sure you go out there where they already are and you have that captive audience and you find ways to engage with them. You don't just present and perform for them. You have to engage with them. So kind of figure out what makes them tick and what they might like, and make sure they don't face that inherent barrier of feeling like they don't understand music without words. And that's a really big thing, is people don't have a lyric sheet. They get really nervous that they don't understand what's happening. And if you have musicians that will talk with and engage, and this goes beyond students, this is with our general audience, just to help, you know, demystify the whole experience a little bit and make sure that they can just enjoy what's happening.
Yeah.